In the room. We've got a large crowd today, which is excellent. Thanks for attending. Okay. Well, I'm Rick Satcher. I'm the Director of Commercialization with MTech, and pleased to have today Sam Tetlow and his group, Grant Engine, to produce a third webinar in the series so far. This one's going to be enabling compelling content and using AI in order to assist with that. And I think it's going to be a great overview. They're going to demo their system for doing so using one of our own solicitations, one of MTech's solicitations. So as always, the webinar is being recorded and the slides will be available on the members only site. We're going to request that you put any questions in the chat function, and we will handle those probably at the end of the session. So Q&A at the end. And as always, at the end, you're welcome to come on mic and on camera and ask a question as well. With that, Sam, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thanks for doing this.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Rick and Tracy and the team at MTech. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with everyone here today. So I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see that in presentation mode? Awesome. All right,
Yeah,
great.
that's good.
Yeah, we're in the third of the series, and I'm Sam Tetlow, founder and CEO at Grant Engine. We are in our 10th year, and we'll go through a little bit of overview at the beginning of Grant Engine, and then if we have time at the end to do a more detailed dive. But I'm incredibly grateful for both folks from Grant Engine on this call. Our magic doesn't happen without you, so thank you. And I'm equally grateful and inspired to have Helena Merck, who's the CEO and founder at Streamline, which is a key partner for us as we continue to evolve and provide support for our clients in an AI environment. So Helena, over to you to do a quick intro.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Super excited to be here. We partnered with Grant Engine about 6 months ago, and it's been super fun to apply our team's background in AI and software to a lot of the excellent work they've been doing for over a decade with grant writing. So excited to kind of dive into that at the later part of this webinar and show you what Alpha can do for you.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Helena. So today we'll do a quick snapshot of the current funding landscape. Things are very dynamic, maybe the understatement of the day. And we'll just give you the latest about what new news and really more importantly, the outlook and what we think you can and really should be doing in this environment. Then we'll dive into writing to win. Helena's going to walk us through a demo of Alpha, and then we'll, time permitting, talk about AI and our future and just how we're framing up with the landscape. This is the third of a series, and I just want to put a shout out to the organization at MTech and Rick and his leadership of the organization. This is, we'll certainly send out these slides, a quick summary of the webinars that we've done since the beginning of the year. Very timely, and throughout each of them, you've seen an update on the current funding landscape. And also we provided content. There was a lot of froth in the environment about what was going on. And so we really focused a lot on that on the February 26th. But there's also some great strategies that we talked about, and those are accessible through the recording and on the slides that you can access through these hyperlinks when you get these slides. So we're sad that this is the last one of our series, but we're really excited about perhaps doing this again later this year or in 2026. If you're not a member of MTech, you got to join. And if you are, you got to rejoin again. So a great group and really useful. Quick snapshot of what's coming up in the next few weeks and months. The end of this month, we'll do a review with HIC, an excellent leader in Deb Atur, who's the former deputy director of the FDA at CDER. We've been inside the room about conversations that are happening. So that'll be a useful activity. We're doing a invite-only dinner in Rockville in early May. So if you are interested in invitation, please just directly email me and we'll look to get you an invite. It's capped at 30 people, so that's a pretty small group. And then we'll be at Bio. If you want to set up a meeting with us, please email Zach on that email there. So thanks. We got some good stuff upcoming. If you're not familiar with Grant Engine, we are really here to save lives and extend the length of a quality life. That is our raison d'etre. That's what we're here to do. And we are very focused on that through bringing innovative, differentiated products that improve the standard of care by getting them funding from federal sources, nonprofit, state sources, and really driving that improvement to have an impact on our society. We have 77 people in total, and we've got a lot of things that make our firm and team work for our clients. And those all really synthesize into one key outcome, which is after saving lives, it's about winning money. And that culminates in a win rate of 2x to 4x better than the national average. As just a grounding, grant funding, contract funding is highly advantageous. Sorry, Tracy, we can skip. That's not our first poll. That's a remnant. But there's no better ROI than spending a little bit amount of money to secure, hundreds of thousands or 3 million. Our strategic non-dilutive funding, 5, 10, $25 million opportunities, and that's a very attractive wager or bet. Validation, we've seen that work very well from grant sources that supports equity funding, and it's as fast or sometimes faster than raising equity. And also importantly, it's about getting your product in the market, and the act of writing down with us and working as a team improves the likelihood of your success of your product as it is developed and launched into the marketplace. So it's a very advantageous source of money, and that money is still there despite a lot of turbulence. It's an excellent complement and precursor to equity. So I'm going to move fairly quickly through a market update. We've talked about this a little bit in previous webinars, and I really just want to start with where and more of a holistic and just a perspective around what it is that we do with federal money and sources, and the impact that we have, and how we really need to, in my opinion, need to think about the money that we get. And as I think about this country, your tax dollars at work, I think about our future as a country, our future of using the SBIR, using military funding to improve the standard of care. And I think we're really facing with the tale of two outcomes. One, if you're a fan of history, as I am, you would reference the 6-volume work by Edward Gibbon about the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. And really what he talked about was that empires fall when they lose the internal strength and that cultural cohesion that made them great. External enemies, whether they be countries or companies, really can only defeat an empire that has already hollowed itself out from within. And you contrast that, that's a historically relevant topic. Contrast that with John Winthrop's City on a Hill that he wrote before the American Revolution. And that's meaningful because it captures the idea of American exceptionalism before America existed. That this new society that was being formed had in his words, a divine mission to model righteous living. And this country has endured as a symbol of national purpose, moral leadership, and the weight of a public example. And the reason I wanted to walk through this is that all of us are using public money. And I believe we have a responsibility to use those funds appropriately to get product in the market to improve the outcome for patients, for the warfighter, for our society. And so this is really a call to action that it's up to us, it's up to you to use that money well and get that product in market to improve the standard of care. So that's really what we're doing here at the end of the day. And I think that's important. All right, to get down to the details, what's going on? What does it mean for me? How do I react to these changes? And I wanted to take a quick snapshot and look at the historical win rate of a publicly available data set, which is the NIH SBIR STTR program. So this is the long run success rate by type of grant. And this goes back to the late 90s. And you can see a clear trend line that I've added, a fancy arrow line here that shows it's getting tougher out there. And since Grant Engine has been in business, it's been choppy, but directionally it's gotten more difficult. And so this latest environment that we're in is I think even more difficult. And this is not new, what we're going through, in the sense of it's getting more competitive and it's it's challenging now, and it's going to be challenging in the future. And this is something, if you've been in this space for 10 years, for 20 years plus, it's an environment that you've lived through. And so the dynamics that we're going through are very significant and severe, but it's not new in the sense that it's becoming more competitive. We've heard some other companies and firms say, in the last few weeks, we've gotten back to business as usual. And I think if your business as usual is that there's always dynamic and change, then sure. But I think it's a new world. And I think that's very clear. What's gone on in the recent past, I think everyone has seen in the news. Harvard University most recently has gotten hit with a freeze on $2.2 billion from Harvard. And depending on who you talk to and believe, that's either anti-Semitism driven or a principled stand on free speech and a academic campus-based opportunity to call it as you see it and have that opportunity for a free and fair democratic environment. Harvard's fighting back. I think this is certainly one to watch as a societal and a case study of how this country continues to run the experiment of democracy. And the other examples are clear. We've seen many grants, approximately 1,500 grants, mostly around diversity focused and HIV funding, get canceled. We've had some contracts seen canceled as well. And that's continuing to shake out. Very few SBIR grants have been cut. I think fewer than 5. The states are continuing to fight back on the executive branch's actions, and HHS itself is going through a major change. We're seeing big staff cuts and the changing of BARDA, the restructuring of the NIH and CDC. I think we've seen a lot of that chop happen, but I think there is certainly something to continue to stay vigilant on. And we'll talk here in a moment about what that means and what you should do about it. This slide talks to funds flows in the SBIR. Again, we use these data because they're publicly available. It's hard to get healthcare data out of the DoD. The NIH is more transparent about it for sure. And this slide looks at the first quarter distribution awards and cash awards for new grants by year, going from 2022, 2023, we saw an increase. 2024, under the Biden administration, we saw a significant decrease. And here's where we are at the end of March, certainly a decrease, call that 20%. And the last 10 days of March, though, were a big catch up. We were at 16.2 at the 21st of March, and a significant scaling into. So we're seeing things start to normalize in terms of meetings are happening. They're still getting delayed in terms of study sections and council meetings, but they are happening. there was a continuing resolution passed on the 14th of March. So there is a budget. That money is getting allocated and awarded to the different agencies, and they're dispersing it as we go. So it's not clear how that money, but there is a budget that exists. And we certainly have seen a slow start, right, to 2025, but we expect to catch up in the rest of the fiscal year through September 30th. What do you do with all this information? It is our firm belief, and this has been borne out from the data, that we're going to see a cut to federal budget sources and some state sources as well. And we don't know how much through the end of the year, but we're anticipating that that's going to be a 20 to 30% reduction in sources that we see. Other places are much more significant. We've seen the CDMRP program be reduced by 57% from 1.2 billion to 650 million. So there are pockets that are quite significant, and there are other pockets that are rising. So there are opportunities still that remain. But the net here for you is that you've got to find more funding opportunities than before. You need to broaden the volume and the source to which you are applying for funding opportunities. And those submissions need to be higher quality to be competitive in an environment. The way to do that is to pursue a greater range of funding opportunities, from federal opportunities, state, global opportunities, and nonprofits. And we can help you do that through our solicitation search offering. For existing clients, we do that on a complimentary basis, and we're willing to not make that expensive for you to work in a partnership environment. And you need to leverage the funding you already have to generate preliminary data for that next opportunity. You need to deepen the relationships you have, and you need to build new relationships on where you go. The last thing I want to just do on the market update, and we'll have questions, we'll answer those at the Q&A portion, but we believe that advocacy is essential. If you follow Project 2025 that was written before the inauguration and actions in this current administration, they have by and large followed consistently. Tracy, if we could do that first poll. There we go. Great. So we're just going to key into the writing process here as we go. So if you could answer that poll as we're talking. One of the things on Project 2025 that's interesting on page 755 is there is a call for an increase in funding for the SBI RSTTR program. It doesn't stipulate how much, but it looks for an increase. And currently, the SBR program takes 3.65% for SBR and STTR of a federal extramural budget for any agency that's over 100 million. We're really looking to rally within the ecosystem to make that 5% in 25. So we're going to call this 5 in 25. And this is something we're socializing now, and we have been. And this is a call to action to reach out to your congressmen and women. That link is a way to do that easily. And then even if you would like a starting message, we've drafted something for you to make personal. So that's a little bit about what's going on. But I think that message has been very consistent about what we're recommending you do. And there are still very large funds available. It is ostensibly the same level as 2024 with a continuing resolution. We anticipate that to be lower, even though a CR has the same funding approved. And so you need to diversify, and this is a call to action to do that. So we're going to transition to, and we'll get the poll results published as we go. So we'll talk to that as we walk through these slides. This slide looks at really unpacking why grants win and what are the internal components. Again, the SBR program is a very good method and source of data because it allows you to have transparency on feedback. So many of these lessons, most of these lessons that we've learned in the SBR program absolutely apply to MTech pursuits, DoD broadly, and BARDA, and other sources as well. And this slide looks at the different funding criteria evaluation that are applied to a grant, and looks at in the green, low score wins, like golf, looks at the scores by criteria for winners in green and losers in blue with error bars. I don't know, Dan, if we can get, I don't know if it's possible. Whomever put the yellow lines, if we could see if we can remove those, that would be ideal. Thank you. The approach section is informative. This is the biggest spread between winning grants and losing grants. And there's spread elsewhere, but you see it most in the approach section, which is the technical details. This stands to reason. There's a lot of grants that pursue innovative projects that have significance in the field, but the approach section stands out as to where and how that grant performs. And getting that part right is necessary to have a successful grant, but it is not sufficient. The approach section, the technical volume matters the most in these scientific grants. And this is data that we've continued to analyze and review. And so really getting that clarity of what that approach section is really your key step. Within the technical section, there are elements that drive success. And this is the unpacking of what are the guidelines and tips that we can implement to consistent earn winning scores for our clients, or you can write yourself. And when you're writing for military applications, which is the MTech focus, there's a two audience set that you have to be successful. There's a military-minded user that has experience and exposure to the warfighter and others around it. And there's a technical subject matter expert that as well. You need to, and some refer to the military focused user as the layperson. And that's informative, but you need to, you need to really address your technical section to both of these audience. And so when we really unpacked, there's that second poll question, if you could answer that as well. Just what is your biggest challenge when preparing a grant? When we really analyzed what drives performance in the outcome of the technical section, it's really a three-part harmony. And that speaks to, at the bottom line, clarity, right? Winning grants are telling a profound and significant story extremely well. That clarity starts at the top of what we call a pyramid of communication and runs all the way through. The substance, the rigor, the reproducibility of your design of experiments, that there's a logical progression of steps that you're going to take that will yield progressive milestones that are achieved that ultimately culminate in the successful outcome of your grant aims. That rigor, that intellectual pressure testing is a key piece. And then, especially in a military environment, but also in any scientific funding grants, any project, to use Mike Tyson's analogy, your plane goes out the window with first contact with the enemy. So you need to have clear paths for alternatives if you run into pitfalls and problems. So what's interesting to me is that this, we're all humans, and with scientific depth, engineering capability, being able to just tell a story that people can understand remains the most important thing. And that's true of where we go and how we do things. So that's a little bit about the causal drivers of what makes things happen. As we think about the military, many of these points, all three of these points are true for NIH funding and BARDA funding as well. It's just you need to align with the marketplace instead of the warfighter for a non-military pursuit. But if you're going after the military, it's tough, right? It can be a fortress of bureaucracy to get through. And you really need to live and breathe the alignment of your product, your solution with the warfighter. You need to be embedded with the source of what and how you do this. If we can keep that up for the next couple slides, Tracy, thank you. You need to understand the pain in a very visceral and an intimate way of what that problem that you're seeking to solve addresses and how your solution will improve the outcomes for your audience. Get embedded, whether that's with a customer in a commercial environment or dual use in the military. Winners have all around great scores. There are no negatives in winning grants, or no perceptible negatives, that you don't present reasons to kill the grant. And you need to have program alignment. We've seen many of clients that come to us, especially in a CDMRP environment, where they get a score that is at or right below a winning mark. And we then ask them, do you have a champion that's going to drive your program inside the military? And the answer is no, or we didn't really write to the warfighter and to the military minded. And we fix that and we see success. So that program alignment is critical a priori as you go. So just to touch on the poll questions. So I think this, the really 3/4 of it is really figuring out what to say and understanding how that reviewer thinks. So it's encouraging to hear that second answer at 44%, that's the pain that you experience. That you can solve for that by getting embedded with the environment that you want to support and pursue. Tight timelines and internal coordination is also a key. That we've got a very data-backed and informative blog post around being proactive drives success to a significant degree. It is not a small difference. So starting early and getting a jump on things is very key. So this poll question lines up very well with our ground truth reality that we see as we write hundreds of grants per year. I'm going to go relatively quickly through this slide. This is just really a case study of us telling a profound story very simply of a company, 410 Medical. This case study is up on our website as well that you can see. But this was a Special Operations Command award and a very compelling solution of bringing saline into the warfighter. And they've got a roadmap for doing that with a hematological insertion of blood as well. This slide speaks to the fact that in a DoD environment, you don't have one valley of death. You have multiple of getting out of the lab into a prototype and then into a demo and then into a fielded product that you can manufacture at scale. So there's multiple programs across the board of where you can traverse and navigate. So I've got 3 more slides that I'm going to go through fairly quickly that also talk to ground truth of what you can do to drive an increased chance of being more competitive. So as we saw earlier, just assume that it's going to be 20 to 30% more competitive. There's no downside to doing that. And we think that's a real world. If anything, it's going to be harder, not easier than 20 to 30% more competitive. And that's driven by smaller budgets. I think it's no secret. DOGE is out there. And this current administration has a clear mandate to reduce federal funding in many areas. So we think smaller budgets are going to happen. And we believe that there's higher submission volume. We saw that in the January 5th SBIR deadline. And that's going to continue. So what can you do about that? We think about this as in a number of ways, but as we think about progressing the reviews, as you start, we call this curb appeal. Having a reviewer actually read the grant and want to dive in and unpack it and really go to the more detail in the grant is a key thing. So the look and feel of a grant and that thin slicing that a reviewer would do does matter. And we're going to call that just curb appeal. That's not the top of the pyramid. That's just table stakes. Are you telling a key story that is impactful and is self-evident as you read that? Is the communication in the figures, the look and feel of the grant, and the content that you're doing at headers, key first sentences of paragraph, simple, and is that consistently there throughout? You get this by stepping away from your project and coming back. That's a practice we install at Grant Engine regularly. Again, focusing on the approach, having that logical flow. We talked about that already. We think about effective communication in a grant environment as a pyramid of communication. And that clarity needs to be there at the top, where you have a synthesized key bullet point, or few words that equal how and why this grant needs to be funded and will impact the standard of care. That's at the top of the pyramid. And then the middle elements are the 4 or 5 or 3 or 7, key elements as to why that key takeaway is true. And then the bottom of that pyramid is the substantive details in the design of the experiments, in the endpoints that are quantitated, in the detailed steps that unpack how you're going to do something that maybe has been done before, but not for your type of product. And so that clarity needs to be there at each of those 3 summary levels. Again, winning grants are strong on all the criteria. They're all around winners. So one way to think about this is look at the weakest parts of your grant first, whether that's you don't have a thought leader that has podium power, to you don't have enough preliminary data. Pick off the lowest hanging fruit first, and then address those problems, and that'll rise your total grant. And keep doing that. Like, be relentless. Do not stop. And as you get to that arena of, I don't know what else I can do to further improve this submission, get external help. Independent eyes from a credible source has a big impact. This is not a small thing. This is a big thing. We do this in a proprietary process by the questions we ask and the selection process that we go through to find 35 great reviewers that are part of the Grant Engine team that support a wide array of funding sources, from SOCOM to CARB-X to nonprofit sources, and of course the NIH and BARDA. If you don't engage with Grant Engine to do this, get some external help. That can really matter. And then, so that's really the core pieces that we wanted to communicate on the winning more often, and turning to AI and using the capabilities that exist. If we could, Tracy, whenever the appropriate time is to wrap that poll, I know you're going to get a critical mass of responses. We'll talk about more about AI maybe after we give Helena some actual time to do her great demo of our product Alpha. But we have a method where we work with clients that's at one level really simple. And we use AI in key pieces of this, but find a large array of opportunities that are appropriate for you, pursue them and win them, and then post-award, we have accounting and compliance that can support. And we're using AI in all of those key areas. So as we look at the poll questions, it's interesting. This is not unexpected. This is kind of what we thought that we would see, in that folks are experimenting, but not using consistently. And 3/4 of you are doing it in some way or are interested. So that's really quite interesting. We've got a critical mass that are using it. You're using it. I think if I'm doing my math off the top of my head, that's well over 50% are having success by trying it and experimenting. So that's really encouraging. As we think about this, is the last slide I've got, Helena, before yours. As we think about writing to win, and in that win phase, how do we supercharge your writing? I've got some data that'll follow the demonstration that support this, but writing a first draft is an excellent use case that thought leaders believed a year and a half ago, and that's been borne out through our ground truth of doing that. So you need inputs to make AI work effectively. AI on its own, left to its own devices, will not deliver you a winning grant. Maybe that's obvious, but it bears stating. So here are some entry points to have success. You need an aims page or a one-pager talking about what you want to do. You need a good idea about how and why your grant is going to win. And that needs probably to be bullets, not full sentences. You need background materials, and you need an awareness that this is an evolving space and the tech is new. You're going to see a demo that I think will blow your hair back, and we're excited about partnering with Streamline. We've looked at a lot of companies that do this, and I think Streamline has the best or right at the top. We haven't done a holistic view, but I think the tech is new, and we've partnered with, we think, the best company out there, and it's still new. So going into the story, going into the process, you need to have an idea of what the right story is. AI reasoning models can help you get there, but they're not going to bring you to the finish line without some intelligence. And then the content build, using the tech that gets you an endpoint of, I've written the right best story for your product in your space. You need to have the right level of detail for relevant sections. Some you don't need to worry about because it's de rigueur in the space. Some you need to go deep on. You need to have a view in your headspace as a human, as a scientist, as an engineer, as a thought leader in your company and in your space around why your product should be used and adopted into the marketplace. We think about this as differentiation. That's a function of your market space, your product, your proof points, the stage of development via your TRL, your team, and your IP. So you need to have that clarity. And AI can do a lot of things, but what it won't tell you today is where you need to be to get to that end state, which is a funded grant or a competitive score. You can get it on a resubmission. So knowing the benchmark for that performance endpoint is mission critical. And we are working on this to have AI help on end state clarity in a quantitative, objective way. But that's not something we can release here today. But knowing that end state is pretty key. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Helena, to do the demo of Alpha.
Thank you. Super excited. Really good framing. I think I really love the focus on the amount of expertise you still need to bring to the table, right? At the end of the day, AI is a tool that's supercharging your expertise, and the quality is so dependent, I'm just going to pull this up, on the data that you're providing to the tool. And the way that we like to think about this kind of conceptually is that there's the data about you as the applicant, then there's the data about this application, right, where you're bringing the specific aims page, and then there's all the data about the specific opportunity that you're pursuing. And what I'm going to demo today starts with that like last chunk of things, which is like the opportunity that you're pursuing. And I'm going to walk through, what it's like to work on Alpha, where you pull up a new opportunity. In this case, we're going to actually demo one that hopefully a lot in the room are familiar with, which is this solicitation from MTech. So what I'm doing here is I'm selecting the solicitation. You can pull up and you can upload any document like this directly into the tool. And Alpha is gonna read all the pieces of text on that document. You can also upload, a dozen different documents. Often there's many different attachments, but for the sake of this demo, we're going to keep it simple. But it's designed for, even the most complicated federal funding opportunities. So this will take some time to process, and we're going to let it do its thinking, but I've preloaded that opportunity in this other tab that I'm going to switch to. So that's an opportunity. You can look at the PDF, kind of explore all the options. But the magic of using a language model here is that it can read all 55 pages pretty much instantly and pull out all the key details, and present it in a way that's contextualized for you as the applicant. What that means is that everybody going through this flow is going to have a slightly customized experience meant for the project that they're proposing, and the technology that they have. Oops, I don't think I drew a yellow line. That's my bad. This stepper here walks us through all the stages before we get into drafting. And this first one is like an overview screen of what I identified as, the key details from this opportunity. Sam, do you know if there's a way to delete the line? That's okay if not.
Good question. I think it's going to be a setting under more. I don't know. Dan, can you text me and Helena how to do that?
Yeah, it's on the left side. See the annotation mark icon.
Oh, that green
Oh, done.
pen.
Good.
Perfect. Thanks.
Perfect. Cool. So this first page is overview, pretty straightforward. But what I'll show you is something that, as you're looking at AI tools, is something that you should be on the lookout for across the board, which is sourcing back to where something comes from. I'll show you how this works here, but then also as we're drafting, this is like a level of transparency you need in anything that's generative, because as Sam was saying, this is pretty new technology. And for you to trust any tool, you need to know exactly how it generated some kind of information. Otherwise, you're pretty much having to do the work from the ground up anyway. So this pulled out all the key information around the funding opportunity, in addition to the timeline of when this was released. This is obviously an opportunity in the past, but we can pretend that this is upcoming. Every future stage from here on will then overlay information about you as the applicant onto this opportunity. And in this demo, I have this like fake company I made up called Neurotech Innovations. And I've kind of already filled in this questionnaire, but I'll kind of show you what I did here, which is, I answered some of these questions that ensure that I'm eligible. I said I was going after focus area 9, my TRL, etc. And then I ran the eligibility check, which gave me some insights onto like areas of potential concern and where I should be spending some time. Again, all of this is generated, right? So you are the expert driving the ship, and you get to decide which of these pieces of information is relevant for you. And the goal is really that this will highlight things that you want to be aware of early in the process, so you can plan for them and account for them. The next phase is around proposal strategy. So this looks at who are you as an organization, and how can you set yourself apart to win. And it'll recommend a few different win themes, all of which you can modify if you have your own kind of preferred way of looking at it, or you can kind of add these to this application's kind of like knowledge base. So I'm just going to add all of these for now. It'll also tell you action items, and here it'll flag things that it could not find from the information that we have about you as an organization, and you can kind of turn these into to-do lists or other things if they're relevant at all. One other part of the proposal strategy is giving you insights into who has successfully won opportunities like this before. For this, we use publicly available information of funding announcements and anything else we can find online. And I like to highlight that because anything that you personally put into Alpha is never used to benefit your competitors or other applicants. It's all kind of secure in your own environment. We don't use it to train models or help anybody else. But if you are curious about who's won things in the past, you can click into these and you can see their key strengths, weaknesses, and other details, in addition to all the sources where you can then read more about the approach they took. Down here, you can also see review criteria just easily pulled into one place, so that you can understand how exactly they're going to be evaluating you. In addition to, when I click on it, you can see the specific criterion that are used in coming up with the score here. Okay, that was a lot. All of this is really acting to get you ready to start drafting. And the final part of that is actually looking at the different deliverables that you need to submit and by what timeline. You can do basic things like assigning them to folks, setting a due date. But the key part that is then used in drafting is actually looking at all the different content requirements and formatting requirements. And the way that you can think about this is like it's an automatic way of configuring your entire project management to make sure that you get things in on time. So you can focus on the parts that really matter, which is like building relationships and coming up with a strategy of pursuing it, rather than in the nuts and bolts of how many pages it have to be, what are the margins, etc. So once all this is good, I can click finish, and I'm taken into the application management environment, where again, I can see all the different deliverables that I'm working on, and I can kind of manage all these parts of context, right, that feed into the generation. And one of those is, background information about my organization. This is where you would upload any like statements of work or specific aims pages that you want to feed directly into the generation. You can continue to manage your memories, which is like things specific to this application. Here we can see the win themes that we added, and we can go back to that eligibility questionnaire, manage it all in one place. But most of where people spend time is actually just jumping into these deliverables. So let's show you what that looks like. What you're looking at here is an editor. Hopefully it looks pretty self-explanatory. I can type, I can do anything that you could in, say, Google Docs, in addition to like commenting, collaborating. If someone else is in here, I can see their cursor. But what makes it really powerful is that this editor environment is aware of what it takes to win. It's aware of the review criteria we're seeing here on the left, of the different content requirements and the formatting requirements. So as it's drafting, it's able to contextualize the response from what it knows is required to win. And in practice, what that means is, let's say I want to answer this question. All I do is I select it and I click the word answer. And it's going to go and scan through my knowledge library of past proposals and pull out information that's relevant, and then transform it to fit, topic area 9 and what I've kind of said my win themes would be. So here you can see the first draft, and I say first draft intentionally. You will have to edit it, and that's an expectation you should have going into any kind of generative AI tool. But hopefully it's enough to kind of get you going in one direction, and you can iterate either by typing directly or by continuing to follow on prompt. And one new feature that we just released is the ability to connect directly to literature. So you could pull things from, say, PubMed or Google Scholar to add more supporting evidence. So one way you could do that, I'm going to turn off my background documents and the web and just say add more supporting evidence. For this question, I'm realizing I don't think it actually makes any sense because it's talking about the background of my team. But this is how you would kind of follow on prompt and say add more supporting evidence from peer-reviewed studies. And similar to before on the previous screen, you can see exactly the thought process that the AI kind of went through of like, what did it consider? How did it kind of think about pros and cons? And then what did it eventually use in the generation? And then in this actual written content, you can also see exactly what files were used. So this is from like that first draft, and then it used the internet to then modify it. And here you can see the other source. So I can click on this and then open up that paper as well. Cool. So I can insert this. I can also choose to exit it and write the normal way. But the goal is really to get you to a first draft faster, and make sure that, you're writing in a way that, makes sense and is compliant. There's a lot of other features that we could go into. Sam, definitely open if you have a specific thing that you want me to double tap on, but I think I'll wrap for now, and then we can get into the Q&A later as well.
Yeah, great. Yeah, let's leave it for Q&A. That's really great. I think, thank you, Helena. Pretty, you walked through a lot, and there's a lot there. I think one of the really compelling things, this is a new feature that Helena started with, is the opportunity to receive any application, right? Any solicitation. You just do a drag and drop, and it parses it and gives you the 411 of that solicitation and offers you an eligibility quiz, right? That is dynamic depending on your early answers. And so as we talk about going after new funding that you're maybe not familiar with, this tool is a big unlock in being able to go do that. And we're talking about making that tool free for users. And we're at the end, we'll have a question if you want to be approached. So that's a good next step. From a timing standpoint, let's look to, we've got a few more questions that are coming, and I've got some slides on just AI broadly, which I think we're not going to have time for. I think I do just want to mention one point before we jump in on questions, which is that AI is a great augmenter. It can be a great augmenter, and what we're building, I think, has the future in our hands, in your hands as users, and in our hands as developers. And candidly, Helena's leadership and her team are the brains behind the software development. We know how to write winning grants, and together I think that's what is needed. You need world-class grant writing, you need world-class software and AI knowledge, and together you're going to have success. And I think that's why this partnership is really powerful for you. And the future is in our hands together. And what we build, we need to build something that is going to be effective, that is useful in outcomes, but is also not straight automation. I don't think that's the way we want to go as a society, and just let AI run amok without using it appropriately and using it effectively. So so I think we want to collaborate with you. So that feedback is really useful and needed in our partnership. So let's jump to questions. And again, in the slides, you'll see that we send out, we'll see data that supports writing first drafts using AI is useful. I'm looking at questions, and I think maybe it would be useful to just talk about privacy and security of information. I know Karen asked that question, but if you can touch on that, Helena, just around that. I think you said it, but just to say it again so people really can hear it and absorb it. But
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
And sorry, Karen, for not being more specific. There's several different security practices we follow. We have SOC 2 Type 2 as like the industry leading like compliance framework that we stand by. And the specific things that we're doing is we never use data that you upload for model training. No other customers ever see your data. It's entirely kept secure in your environment. We go down to like row level access control. In all of our databases, everything's encrypted at rest and in transit. So happy to kind of send over, our security and trust center as well, but know that security is a top concern of ours, and then every single, customer that chooses to trust our platform.
Yeah, that's important. So that's key. Thanks. And that's something we stand by for sure as well. There's another few questions I just wanted to answer on the poll questions. I was really answering the question of how many people are exposed to and using AI. And so if you can see, this is sharing. Yeah, there we go. Can everyone see that screen share? on the poll question 3?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, great. So this is the 75%. If you add up the first answers of how are you currently using it? Well, I'm actively using AI, I'm experimenting with AI, and I'm interested but unsure where to start. You know, that was the 75% mention, Ralph. And so I think you could say 19% are actively using AI, and another 38%, that was the greater than 50%, are using it and experimenting with it, but not consistently. So that's the 75% answer. I don't have good data on percent of awarded grants that are using AI today. I think we did see a big increase in volume of the January thing. So that's that, you know, I'd say a good measure are using it in some meaningful amount. Is the software live? Yes. You can purchase this now. It is, I think, very inexpensive. I mentioned on a webinar before that it costs a cup of coffee, that just to stipulate, that's a cup of coffee per day for a month. So $199, not one cup of coffee. I think $199 per month plus a very nominal success fee is a steal for this tech. So I don't know how many days are offered in the demo. The demo is a demo. We're thinking about a free trial, but that's something we can talk about on a case by case. If that mentioned the demo. Can this software be used for NIH and NSF grants with no product development? Absolutely, yes. If you're talking about like an academic grant or a non-company grant, non-product development focused grant, absolutely. I think that's one of the beauties of the platform. So that's a firm yes. Are funding agencies using AI to evaluate grant submissions? That's a very good question. They're not allowed to. That's the direction from the NIH has issued that directive. So that's a firm case, and we don't know with perfect fidelity, but we've seen enough summary statements to know that directive may not be being followed 100% of the time, but right now, no, in a formal way. We talked about security. Can Streamline tool provide citations for de novo content? I'm not sure I understand de novo content, Diane. I don't know, Helena, do you want to talk to citations in general?
Yes, so we can cite external sources, like if you're using the internet or research papers, and then also internal sources, like if it's pulling from your own documents, and then you can use that to generate a bibliography. I'm also not sure what de novo means, so if that doesn't answer your question, feel free to ask a follow-up.
Yeah, just ask again. I think the system does a very good job, and you can see this in a one-on-one demo with everyone that you'd like to see, of when it writes content from an uploaded document, it'll refer to which document that content came from. And so that's a referenceable trackback. So that's in there right now. But we could certainly answer those questions offline with another detail.
Sam, I got a question for you. One that came to the Q&A section, but I first want to mention that to all here that Eric Tam put in the link to this AI, so you can all check it out. And I think maybe if it gets lost in the shuffle here, we can send out to participants that as well. But one of the questions that we didn't really address, Sam, it goes back to that really interesting graph you had of phase 1 and phase 2 grants and applications. And the question is, is it easier for a phase 2 proposal, assuming that you get a phase 1? We saw that kind of blip up in the graphic where they were more rewarded, but then it's dropped down considerably over the last, I don't know, 4 years, 3 years.
Yes. Yeah, good question. So in the NIH SBIR continuum of funding, the highest win rate remains that phase two, following a successful phase one. And I think that's the key determinants and the excitement, all the other standard evaluation criteria. So that does remain the highest on average win rate in the landscape of NIH SBIR funding, is a phase two following a successful phase one.
Any rationale around that recent decrease, or is it just that, it's a function of how well people do in their phase one, right?
Yeah, it is. I think it's idiosyncratic to that company in the aggregate. That data, and I looked again yesterday and this morning, that's through 2023, so it is somewhat dated. They haven't published stuff for fiscal 24 yet. I think that chart doesn't show volume, and so I don't have a perfect answer, but it could be that there were a higher volume of phase ones, all else equal. And the NIH can do that to give more companies a shot to progress their product. And that's more of like letting the marketplace work. I need to look at the data, but I think it could be that, and I'm speculating here, but it could be that they gave more phase ones out and fewer of those were successful.
Okay. Yeah, understood.
But it's the data. It's supply and demand, I think, is the equation that you need to look at. So,
okay.
Yeah.
We have one more question on customer support for Alpha. Yeah, that's an important one, I guess.
Yeah, great. That's a great question. So 100% yes. We are here with you in this journey, and we have a onboarding protocol and process that pairs a select group of program managers from Grant Engine with you. Those are folks that know the software. We use it internally. We eat our own cooking. And so they're obviously helping projects be written internally using the software. And we're selective about where we do that. That's not on all of our grants. But that onboarding process is methodical and available. Like, we are there with you every step of the way of showing you how to use the software yourself and being a phone call away, to make sure the process is smooth and that you have that right infrastructure and support around making it easy for you to use the platform that is an unlock for you. So this is a key question, and philosophically, we're here to enable you to be successful. And that is something that we want to do. We already do, and we want to do more of that. And I think if it's an intricate question, in detail, we'll tag in the Streamline team to help us. So.
Right. And another question that I believe you've answered, but just for clarification, again, is, can you have more than one person working in the program? And I believe the answer is yes, because I saw Helen the way it's kind of like working in Microsoft Word or something where you can see each other's edits and typing and so on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly right. Yep.
Okay, great. I think that wraps up. The questions were a little over, but thanks for everyone for staying on board for this presentation. Sam, want to thank you and your team. Helena, thank you very much for the presentation and going and using an MTech example, our old multi-topic. That was a difficult one.
Yeah,
that had
It was fun to look at.
had a lot of requirements associated with it. So, hold on, I think we're seeing just a. I think
other questions. I don't. What's the protocol, Rick? Can we stick around if people want to stick around? Is that appropriate?
Yeah, I think that's fine. We could stick around for another 5 or 10 minutes if people, because it looks like folks are still asking questions. So if you're interested in listening in, please stay on. If not, have a great day and thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, great.
Dan was asking, but June answered, if we use the AI software, can we follow on with, I don't know, with GE personnel at a lower rate? Oh, I see. Yeah, so maybe just for clarification's sake, the 199 is one license or just one
Yep. So the pricing is $199 per month for as long as you use the software. I think that's a low, and plus a nominal success fee, very nominal, for all the wins that you get off of the platform. And with that, you get all the users you want on your company side. You get support from Grant Engine to have the software be used yourself. And this slide may be useful. Let me jump to this. This is the range. If everyone can see this slide, this is just the range of what we offer. So Alpha, as a standalone platform, you write the grant and it's a writing tool. We support you in onboarding and ramping up. If you want our support to help you write the grant and do external review, we can add grantsmanship and external review to that. We can just do grantsmanship as well. And we've got two flavors of this, a base and an optimize. The base version is you get lots of support on an external review, which is very valuable. And you submit the grant and you develop the budget. With Optimize, we submit the grant and we do a budget workup for you. You get just-in-time support for either of those. And we can be flexible on the scope and scale of what we're doing here you have the platform, plus we're adding value to whatever degree makes sense. And then Flagship is the full spectrum of support. We're writing the grant and really being a full service. We need key inputs from you, and we need to have that working in lockstep to make sure we're finding success together. But with Flagship is on the right, where we write the grant. So I think we're still seeing, is there questions of, is there customer support for Alpha? And that's still a firm yes. So for $199 a month, you get essentially your organization has a license. So that's good. Does your company provide consultation on an individual basis to assess how Streamline can support us and other non-dilutive? Yeah, absolutely. I think Alpha is the name of the platform that Grant Engine is selling. We're white labeling the Streamline platform. So